That was purely based in like family transition stuff. My dad got a job over there, so we were on a 1-year contract, and we got over there, and yeah, he actually got really sick, and we stayed because we felt like the thing of being in the sunshine was probably good, and so we ended up staying for like 15 years.
There's still so much that I want to say. I want to tell you just how bad it felt. I see you walking out the other way. Don't let me fool you. I got a fragile little heart that breaks every time I picture your face.
I didn't think I had it all. I felt like I had been granted a very, very small foot in the door. That was all. I felt pretty lucky, because I know there's not a lot of people who get that opportunity nowadays, especially. But to me, it was just like, it's like getting a Yankees uniform. You don't make it until you played, a couple thousand games, and then well, maybe not a couple thousand, but you have to prove yourself. It's not about just getting the jersey. That was my first girlfriend in college. Yeah, and she was a friend of mine, and we remember we were I think underage drinking. I believe we were underage. I don't know if we were a legal age to drink, but we were sitting on the floor of my kitchen, and at that point we had no cash, so we were heating the area with the stove. We left the oven open, and the oven was on so that we could heat the entire house. So in this small kitchen, it was really warm, and everywhere else in the house it was freezing. But we were sitting there drinking beer and eating gummy worms or something like that. It was like a very college moment, and talking about, I don't know, existentialism or something college-y. And it was that moment when I looked over at her and I saw this kind of change. It wasn't necessarily in her. She went from being this friend of mine to being my lover, and that was where the idea came. Yeah. I mean, it's great, but it's this point in the music industry where I just saw a thing. Tom Petty said, if you had told people in my generation that they'd be listening to music from a game show, they would have laughed. And that's true of his generation. It's completely true. But it's a different field now, and I think for me to make a career, I'll take it wherever it is. And I thought that was it was incredible. I got to go to France, and party with French people, and then play my song to these people who were dancing and going crazy in front of me. It was great. I thought it was amazing. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think when Wildflowers came out, it was like one of those first shows that I ever really wanted to go to, and I begged my parents, and I think they said no. I think they told me I couldn't go because they knew that there were all sorts of illicit things happening in a Tom Petty show that I wasn't to be around. So yeah, I love Tom Petty. A lot of Lowell George, Little Feat. My dad was really into that kind of stuff. I listened to a ton of Beatles, and then I used to play saxophone. I stopped playing saxophone because I found out that saxophone wasn't cool back then. I lived in upstate New York, and it was later. No one could explain to me at 11 or 12 that there was this dude named John Coltrane. No one could tell me that. Don't worry, stick with it because it gets cool later on. And I was desperate to have some friends that I'd play music with, so I picked up a guitar. And I think I put it back down a year later because I just hated it. I thought it was just a hack's instrument. And I picked up a clarinet at that point. And I played clarinet for quite some time, and I was really into Dixieland, that hot jazz scene back then. I thought it was just the coolest stuff I'd ever heard. and I still do. But I don't know. My path was more about rock and roll music.
I was never gonna see the rain. I know that I could never leave you. I know it's your me to stay. Some kind of way, with every breath I take, then let go a little bit more. That's my credo, starting today.
I have no idea. I don't think I do. I don't know. I live in America. You know, like here in the States, it's a different story. Where part of the reason that I left Australia was because in a country of 25 million people, it's like if you play music that, you know, maybe like my music is considered by some people to be more obscure or, you know, throwback or whatever. Mm-hmm. In a country of 25 million people, that becomes a real hindrance. You know, in a country as large as the States, with direct access to Europe, there's like a lot of people. So eventually, if enough people hear your music, there's like a lot of people on Earth, you can probably make a career out of it. That was my belief. It goes back and forth. I mean, like I listen to a lot of, you know, old school soul and R&B as well, and I wanted to make a nod to that, even though I was like, to be honest, like a little uncomfortable making reference to those genres, but I did, and I really love playing that music. So whether or not it's like something that I'm kind of born to do, I don't think I have the Sam Cooke thing in me or anything like that, but I do feel like that style of music should not die out by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's some of the best stuff I've ever heard. So yeah, I think that the album is cohesive, but there's a lot of different tastes on there. You know what, it's like, what do I enjoy most? I enjoy most when I mean, I love getting into the studio, but the studio is an excruciating process where you're just like, I mean, the studio picks you up and smacks you around and waits for you to drop dead, you know? Touring kind of does the same thing, but it's like when you're touring, at least you're in front of people, so you can see what's happening, how they're reacting, are they, you know, are they into this song, are they not into it? And then you can get a bit of a gauge for what you're doing. And also that seems to be, for me, I mean, I recorded my record in a way that allowed me a lot of space to experiment. There's a song on there called Mostly He Says, and I was telling the guys, I actually went back to my source tapes that we've turned into digital stuff now so that I have a record, but a record of it, not a record. Mm-hmm. I was going back through that, and I found the first take of this song, Mostly He Says, and that's the one that we ended up with on the CD and the record. I didn't realize that it was the first actual take. But when I was listening to it and kind of thinking about where it was at, that song was born in the studio. That was a song that I had no chorus to, I had nothing past the verse. I knew the verses and I didn't have a chorus, so I was just going to kind of play with it. And it was one of those moments where we got into the studio and I was like, oh my God, I need a chorus to this song. So that moment for me is like what I go just kind of figure it out right then in the moment. And that's what I love doing live too. But when you can capture it, it's pretty cool.
Don't let me fool you.